Hello everyone, welcome to Fame Medieval, and today we're going to talk about merchants and their input in medieval society. A merchant was a businessman engaged in retail trade, and the word merchant is believed to derive from the Latin word mercari, meaning to traffic, or the French mercis, meaning wares. A medieval merchant would travel and traffic with foreign countries, or a trafficker, a trader. Also, the merchant would source his supplies and sell them to various customers via shops, markets, or medieval fairs. Most villages, towns in the Middle Ages were as self-sufficient as possible, so it was more usual exotic or expensive goods that a traveling merchant generally traded in. General merchants were called mercers. The mercers were later restricted to a dealer in textile fabrics, silks or woolens. Enough with the dry theory. Today I'm gonna talk about in more detail. Like, the merchant could be a person who makes the goods or trades some goods, or controls a group of other people who make and sell their goods. And that is the main thing. Many people think that a merchant, even now, can only sell goods. Like, he stands in a shop, he has a shop, he's 24/7 there, and he sells and goods and gets the money back. That was not entirely the case though in the Middle Ages. There were many merchants who had to travel a long way to get their goods, or some people lived in the villages and once a week or once a month go to the bigger towns to get their goods and get money. And even in the Middle Ages, like, not everyone was traded with money. Like, in village fairs, there was a lot of cases that if, like, the trader can sell some poultry or animals or cattle, he could buy like wheat or rye, and it could be like a good trade, not just money. Medieval society divided itself between three social categories that included the clergy, the peasants, and the fighters. Merchants were not considered as part of these three categorizations, and so were largely discriminated. The clergy and the peasants and the nobility considered the merchant as one who was seeking to enrich himself at the expense of society. Meanwhile, the same society increasingly depended on merchants for the distributions of much needed goods. Many people didn't realize why the merchants were so important for that medieval society. In the early emergence of the merchant class, the clergy was opposed to the merchant activities such as banking and trading. The clergy convinced the people and the populace that these activities were evil and against God's will. As such, people blamed the merchants for natural catastrophes including disease, floods or famine as a punishment to the community from God. Notably, the nobility were particularly with hatred of the merchants, who in the eyes of the nobility were perceived as misers. The nobility's behavior was in contrast to that of the merchants. The noblemen were known to spend much, while the merchants were keen on calculating loss and profit. One of the most important factors in the expansion of trade and commerce in the medieval Europe were the Crusades. Like, many new trade routes, like via Italy, were opened to the medieval merchant traded in like many goods that were not present in the region, like wine, spice, food, raw materials, furs, cloth, glass, jewels, and many other, and a whole host of different luxuries. The trade made the merchants rich, and their work also brought wealth to the rulers of the land in which the trading took place, as they taxed all the traded goods. So the traders made money, the merchants, and at the same time the nobility made money, which was beneficial for everyone, and that's why trading was such importance for society, for the medieval society really. Merchants were of two types, settled and traveling. Settled traders had permanent shops in towns and villages, while traveling merchants only brought their wares to the markets. Markets were held once a week, and fairs held twice a year also offered wares by local shopkeepers, visitors, and peddlers or hawkers, street vendors without a fixed site. Shopkeepers had their permanent shops on the square, merchants ran small shops and had the right to retail products they bought from artisans. Village people got their supplies from neighboring craftspeople in the local tavern or from a merchant who brought supplies from larger townships. At the markets, goods from the village and the countryside would be exchanged for goods produced in the town. The terms of trade were set by the ruler, for example that only local merchants with freedom of city rights could sell their goods freely, while the traders from larger cities would venture abroad. Many regulations and detailed rules governed trade. If it were found that the merchant was dishonest and gave short weight, he was severely punished. Markets and fairs were social events where merchants and craftsmen could sell their stock and goods. Many craftspeople traveled from a village or the countryside to the nearest market town to sell their wares and purchase goods which they needed. As I said earlier, the trade could not have been just stock exchanged for money, but it also could be stock exchanged for other stock. For example, a butcher might trade his cattle or raw meat with a blacksmith, who might give him butcher tools which are needed for his job. Markets were held once a week and fairs were held once or twice a year, depending on the ward. There were many unsettled merchants or peddlers who traveled from town to town, selling their wares and making profit. Many of them did not have the ability to raise and demolish a market stand every day, so a vast majority would sell their goods on the floor. Markets and fairs were later adopted by villages, but to a lesser magnitude and extent. About guilds, I'm going to be talking another day because it's a very diverse theme and I could go into a lot of detail about it. That's why it's not included in the video. Thank you for watching. This was the first video on the channel. Hope you enjoyed it. Give a like if you did, and more medieval content will be coming soon, so make sure to subscribe. Tell in the comments what do you want to see next, and goodbye.